Hello, my name is Tom Wright. I am a volunteer producer at CTN, the cable access television station in Ann Arbor. I have had the honor of working with them for over 10 years. They are now celebrating 50 years of serving our community. Today we are introducing the Ann Arbor Public Schools CMPP Magnet Program videos for broadcast on CTN after a brief hiatus. Thank you for your time and consideration.
I have been dealing with homelessness pretty much since I graduated from high school, and I really had nowhere to go. Within 6 weeks, I think I was pregnant with my oldest child. So that was sort of my initial life start, right? As a parent, I was homeless. And that was when I got my first apartment and kind of figured out how to survive. Over the course of my life, other things have happened that have brought me back to homelessness. I've always been a single parent, and I always had children that had special needs, and I always had partners who were abusive. Trying to manage my life, working, being a mom. And yet, through all of that, I went to college, I got an education, and there were still pieces missing. Through all of these various experiences, I kind of spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was missing from my life. And what I realized was missing was a sense of community where people understood what I was experiencing. All these compounding factors kind of occur when we don't have adequate support. And so when I kind of came through my last experience with homelessness, I was pretty determined not to go back. Being someone who suffers with mental illness, I know all about what trying to deal with recovery is about. So how can I, with my wealth of experience, my background in human services, my lived experience as a homeless person, as a single mother, what I decided was I could try to create a support group for people who were kind of had that same sort of cycle in life. And that's why it's called Circling Back, because it is a cycle. Homelessness and housing issues tend to be cyclical for people. And we need to have that support in place for when things don't go well. And our current community and society doesn't really provide a lot of easy access points for people to find that kind of support. In fact, once someone receives services and moves on, often those connections to those services and providers end. And so they're left with no one. And that's what Circling Back is about. It's about, you've made it through your crisis. What can you do to help those who are experiencing their own crisis or might be on the verge of experiencing a crisis?
One of our most ancient instincts as humans is fear. As far back as 100,000 years ago, our hunter-gatherer ancestors had to rely on this primal instinct in order to survive. We had not conquered the earth as our own yet. It still belonged to the wild. But as we have evolved and cut down thousands of miles of forests and hunted hundreds of species to extinction, climbing our way to the top of the food chain, a part of that fear still remains within us. Horror movies are a popular form of entertainment that twists this fight-or-flight instinct into something consumable for thrill and enjoyment. Sociologist Margie Kerr explains this as a phenomenon called the excitation transfer. Quote, "After an accelerated heart rate, heavy breathing, and other physical reactions to fear wear off, viewers experience intense relief. Positive feelings intensify, and, in short, fear floods our brains with feel-good chemicals." End quote. The wearing off of this fear is due to the safe environment that we find ourselves in when experiencing the stimuli. However, we become exposed again when threatening environments that we often see on screen are presented to us in real life. From the darkness of our rooms, fearing the monster under our bed, or at the beach, fearing a murderous great white shark, this fear in these films by association can unconsciously control our lives. We as humans paint a self-portrait of ourselves, the prey to monstrous creatures like apes, sharks, and bears. We do this as these very animals fall dead around us by our hand. We are the predators. Instead of sharp teeth or claws, our weapon is misrepresentation, ignorance, and fear. You've seen Jaws and read the seemingly innumerable stories of beautiful surfers losing an arm or leg to a great horrific shark. But in reality, shark attacks are quite uncommon, with only 137 attacks worldwide, only 9 of which were fatal, and the majority of which were provoked when humans harass, try to feed, or hunt the sharks. On the flip side, 100 million sharks are being killed every year due to the hunting of the animal for their fins. An animal that has survived over 400 million years and multiple mass extinctions. Now, out of the 476 species existing, 120 of which are considered at risk for extinction. But the problem doesn't just stay under the surface of the water. On land, animals like gorillas and apes are also experiencing the same difficulties. In the cult classic film, King Kong, a gigantic gorilla is seen climbing the Empire State Building and clawing at airplanes in the sky. This image of a large, threatening animal putting humans in great danger is quite the opposite of reality. These apes are very advanced animals who were taught to learn sign language and are also experiencing threats to their population. Bushmeat trade, disease, poaching, and habitat loss are just some of the threats to this animal's population, many of whose species are considered critically endangered. It's time to reanalyze who is the real predator after all. This is Stephanie Preston, a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan. She's done countless research on the scientific effect our brain has to vulnerability. I talked to her specifically about how this vulnerability, especially in animals, affects us, and how we can change this traditional narrative that all less vulnerable-looking animals are bad and harmful. Why are we, as humans, more inclined to save these seemingly more vulnerable animals?
This kind of evolved tendency to need to protect and care for these cute, fragile creatures. We think it's like a almost innate predisposition that also gets augmented during, parenting, and the hormones that change during parenting to be even more powerful in those cases.
How do these emotions that we get when we see a more vulnerable looking animal affect our decision-making skills?
People we find in our experiments and in online donations and charitable giving, they give more money and they want to support charities and they want to save individuals that have these features.
Is there a way we can reprogram how we see less vulnerable animals in order to better conserve more animals who need it?
I really think that knowing more about the species helps. I think these in-person experiences with these animals can really help, and if not in person, in a documentary that shows what's amazing and spectacular and interesting about this animal that they might not know very much about, because I think there are very few animal species that don't have amazing capabilities. Even if they're ones we can't relate to, they can be fascinating. The more you can bring out the life history and ecology of these less familiar animals, I think the better. And even though a lot of people aren't supportive of zoos because they, keep animals housed in environments different from their original one, the zoo done right with enough space and enough enrichment can actually really help bring these animals to people where they are. Like, for example, I don't like snakes. And I probably would never want to give money to a snake. But the the Toledo Zoo actually has, in the Detroit Zoo, they have really amazing reptile houses. And so just seeing the sheer size and amazing beauty of the snakes makes me more inclined to find them interesting and, worthy of help, even though they're the exact opposite of a cute and fuzzy creature.
Really good. Thank you. Mwah, 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 mwah.
And you say that Putin has telegraphed, what his aims are and that he's not a thug. Well, look, I would like you to explain to me how he and us can justify the trumping up of this hysteria in the Crimea, which has given the Russians the ability to do what they're doing.
The extremism didn't come from Russia. It was coming from Western Ukraine.
Over the last several days, the United States has been responding to events as they unfold in Ukraine. Now, throughout this crisis, we have been very clear about one fundamental principle. The Ukrainian people deserve the opportunity to determine their own future.
See, the war actually for Ukrainians, the war didn't start on February 24. The war started 8 years ago in Donbas region. Since then, around 16,000 people, Ukrainian young people, men and women, already died. So there was a low-grade simmering war that Putin was keeping there. The talk started again that he's pulling a lot of new military into Ukrainian borders. I personally didn't take it seriously, so I didn't expect then, and I was totally shocked that when the full invasion started. We have relatives in Kyiv, which is central Ukraine, the capital. Some of my family, they spent nights in shelters, basically almost every night, especially was really bad in Kyiv. They are in this extremely dangerous situation. So we know people so some family, some friends that are fighting there. My sister, personally, my sister is working as a volunteer, so she bakes nutritional bars for soldiers. She also is working to bring some medication for children, the orphans of the war and refugees. A lot of children who are separated from parents, who are killed, who lost everything. And so that's another thing that my sister also is helping. There are children who comes to their house and she just gives shoes and clothes because they don't have anything. They lost everything. What changed for us that we have my nephew 9 years old and my niece 7 years old here with us. The reason they came here because they were so afraid, especially my niece, to go to shelters and all the sirens at night. And so she was crying, said, "Mommy, I don't want to die." And so that's why my sister decided to send them to United States. They walked 15 miles to Polish border on foot to reach the border. And so they went to Poland and then flew to Italy, and from Italy they flew by themselves to the United States. So now they enrolled in Thurston Elementary, and so they're going to school here, and so they live with us. So the life is different. It's like before and after. So this is an after. So we live in a different reality, and psychologically it's difficult. Not physically, but psychologically it's difficult. So it's first thing in the morning, what I do, I read the news. Every 2 hours, I read the news because the news constantly changes. There are so many more civilians killed than the military personnel. Only just about over 500 Ukrainian soldiers were killed, but a civilian, it's in thousands. It's in thousands because the Russians are targeting civilians and children, schools, hospitals. It's horrifying and it's unthinkable. And what can you say? It's a crime, and they should answer in God. There is no word. There is no word. It was very scary in the first 2 weeks, especially of the war. Very scary. So it was just like something was holding me inside, and I was just, I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't concentrate. Right now, I'm more back to normal, and it's because I see the situation, I see the help, I see how Ukrainian people are fighting. And also I talk to my relatives, I talk to my cousin in Kyiv, and she is so optimistic. I call her and I'm in shelter right now. We organize some games, we plant flowers, and she's talking at the time the Russians are dropping bombs in Kyiv. So they were at that point more optimistic than we are. So that's how we support each other. We talk to each other and analyzing the situation, I guess. And the most difficult is also to be here and not being able to do anything. So it just helped that trying to raise money, because I believe that money will help Ukraine. So not just post on Facebook or we praying for you, we thinking of you. I believe that money, financial help right now, that's what's going to change the outcome of the war. And so that's what I'm trying to do, at least. On May 9th, Biden signed land treaty, and that's what's going to decide the outcome of the war. And I believe that it just takes one person to change the outcome of the future of the whole world, I believe. I'm being optimistic. I'm being optimistic more than 2 months before. And I'm sure that the victory is coming. It's just the question when and how many life is going to be lost before it happens.
95% of journalists who cover sports are men. Which begs the question, where are the women?
Here's a good example. I've covered the NBA Combine sometimes, like either social media or reporter. And I remember like walking through the gym with all the NBA scouts that were there and then the college players who were there. I want to say I was one of maybe 2 or 3 women in the entire place. And you're talking about hundreds of people in there.
I will do a spring football game today where I will probably be the only female there. And that is every weekend, every job that I do. It's very rare that there is another female on the crew.
In 2021, the sports media industry was given a gender grade of F on the Associated Press Sports Editor's Gender and Racial Hiring Report Card. But the problem begins in college, creating a pipeline issue for women in the sports media industry. In fact, a 2022 study from Ithaca College found the disparities in enrollment between men and women in university sports media programs. At Butler University, the sports media program enrolled 76 men and only 22 women. At Oklahoma State University, 97 men and 29 women. At Ithaca College, 116 men and only 19 women.
I decided to do sports, and I think I didn't think about it when I first went to college because there just weren't many women in sports.
But I don't know that I went into Marquette thinking like this is what I want to do, or that I even realized that sports was a legitimate, there was a legitimate opportunity in sports for me, to pursue that as a career.
So, less women are studying sports media, and problems still arise for those who do find a way into the industry. These female analysts, commentators, and reporters are tested on their knowledge despite their qualifications, and are often extremely sexualized. People refuse to look past the fact that they are women to see that they are actually experts in their field.
Okay. If I mispronounce the name, she's a female and she doesn't know what she's talking about. My male colleague mispronounces the name, he just got tongue-tied.
It's a constant test of your qualifications and intelligence when that's not necessary. Like, you should just look at the credentials somebody has and be like, oh, that's an insightful point. I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah. I have always felt that I had to study more and know more than my male counterparts because there is an outside view of she doesn't know what she's talking about. Remember walking to a Tennessee football game that I was covering, and someone said to me, like, hey, what's a squib kick? Like, just randomly as I'm walking. It's like it was them wanting to test me.
You get in an Uber or you're out and someone asks what you do and you tell them, and all of a sudden they've got a quiz for you. And it's like, yeah, all right, that certainly isn't happening to my male colleagues.
There's a constant pressure to never mess up and to always know more because I am a female. When you cover what is primarily a male sport, football, basketball, baseball, the idea of, well, you never played the sport is always there. Even though most of the men that you see calling sports has probably not played that sport either.
But progress is being made.
Absolutely. I mean, when I first started, the only job a female could have on TV was a sideline reporter. And it grew into a host of an NFL show or play-by-play or an analyst. Like, we now have female analyst. Doris Burke is a female analyst for the NBA, a male sport.
And I think that number is definitely growing. And what I've seen from ESPN is an intentional effort to make that happen, to put more women at the forefront, to put more Black women at the forefront. Like, I think that they've been a leader in that space, and have been, doing great work to make broadcast feel diverse.
More women being on screen makes the dream seem like more of a reality for aspiring young women, and it has also built a strong community between the women that are currently in the field.
What you see now between women in sports is like this incredible bond because we all have been through the same thing.
And a bunch of us have a group text, and we talk a lot. And there are men who have kids as well in our group, but it's nice having someone in the same situation, like same kind of stage of our life. Like things like you wouldn't think of, like what's it like to pump in an NFL stadium when you have you're back from maternity leave, but you have a kid, what's it like, I don't know, so many things that you just wouldn't think of and that men frankly wouldn't understand. And so to have someone else to kind of just talk to about that has been really helpful.
So reach for your goals. Change happens one person at a time.
There will always be a subset of this country or world that doesn't believe that women should be in sports, and no matter what you say, what you do, how great you are at your job, you're not going to change their mind. Also realize it's not my job to change their mind. They will sit there and they have their beliefs, and you will see it on social media, and the mute button and the block button is very powerful. And when you realize that those opinions don't matter and those opinions won't ever be changing, and that's not the viewer that I'm broadcasting to, then there becomes a freedom in doing your job and a confidence that comes along the way.
Thank you for viewing the Ann Arbor Public Schools CMPP Magnet Program videos.